Get good. It's a sentiment that many have heard and parroted, and, much to the frustration of many, it's a task that can be much easier said than done. Fortunately, for the vast majority of people, it's a very solvable problem, if you know how. The very first step for improvement is obtaining a metric. Without knowing where you stand, improvement can be extremely difficult and frustrating. In World of Warcraft, the easiest way to obtain metrics come in the form of an add-on known as a DPS meter. Simply put, a DPS meter is a meter that records your damage output during a fight and shows you the average damage per second that you and your party are dealing and ranks each source of damage. Meters aren't the only source of metrics available to you, however. Through the game settings, you can enable advanced combat logging, and with this you can record your actions taken during combat in detail and create a file on your computer that compiles this data. Upon uploading this data to a website like Warcraft logs, you can receive a parse, which is measured as a percentile, with the higher your percentile indicating a better performance, while lower percentiles will indicate proportionately worse performances. Make sure to record your starting metrics. Now that you have a metric for how well you're doing, you can start to improve. Improvement can come in many forms, but you'll likely find it valuable to change your strategies depending on your learning types. While there are likely many more learning types, we're just going to focus on the main 4 types today: visual, auditory, reading and writing, and kinesthetic. It's important to note that most people are going to be varying mixes of different learning types to varying degrees. Visual learners tend to learn best through seeing things such as graphs, charts, images, videos, etc. There isn't very many resources for these types of learners for Warcraft specifically. However, you can find written guides that provide example images, and there's no shortage of video guides, and Warcraft logs can provide detailed breakdowns via graphs. Alternatively to Warcraft logs, you can also use WoW Analyzer to help break down data from Warcraft logs even further and make it more digestible. Auditory learners prefer learning via hearing, much as the name suggests. The primary resources for these types of learners are going to be video guides. However, I would also suggest finding a streamer and watching them, as they tend to give commentary on their gameplay and answer viewer questions. If you're watching this video, you're likely an auditory learner in at least some capacity. Reading and writing learners have the most wealth of resources available to them. There are many written guides of varying depth. I prefer Wowhead's class guides, but you can perform well with Icy Veins as well, and for much shorter guides with less depth, I know people that swear by Archon. Additionally, you could benefit from reading the entries in the dungeon journal about each boss, although you'd be missing information about timings and tactics that you might get from a video guide. Kinesthetic learners are the last type, and they're all about doing things. Kinesthetic learners prefer hands-on learning to reading guides. These types of learners would benefit the most from training dummies, but I would caution you against taking DPS meters against dummies too seriously, since they're always going to be artificially high. The main point of training dummies is entirely just to ingrain your rotation and get the muscle memory down. Other mechanical improvements you can keep in mind are super simple. You just have to, make sure you remember them. You gotta make sure your UI is clean enough to see your character's feet, and check your feet every now and then. Another good habit to keep is to use your peripheral and paracentral vision to keep track of the environment and your positioning. Since minimizing movement will tend to increase your performance, so clear visuals will allow for more efficient movement when performing mechanics or dodging AoEs. I would highly recommend running LFR or Mythic Zeros a bunch of times, even if you no longer need loot from them, because additional mindful practice in an easier version of these spaces is extremely valuable so long as you don't overdo it. With these methods in mind, it's important to experiment with a variety of them and record your progress. And once your progress is recorded, compare with your starting metrics. It's very important not to fall into the pitfall of comparing your damage dealt or your healing done with other classes or other people, as many distinct variables can be wildly different between two people. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. I believe in you.